here's a question. What do you think is the cheapest national daily newspaper in Britain? Thinking nationals, thinking dailies. What do you think is the cheapest newspaper available in the country today? Metro? Star, I think I heard over there. I'll tell you what, I'll talk you through the runners and riders, shall I now? The Guardian, that costs you £2, OK? And the Times will cost you £1.40. They both have deals for subscribers, but those are the cover prices. Then we move to the Daily Mail and the Daily Mirror, both of which come in at 65p. Now, the Express, a lot of people, I think, might look at that and think the Express is only 10p. Some people might even suspect that that's what they want you to think at a glance. But I haven't shown you the not-so-large print, and when I do, you'll see that the full text actually says is now 10p cheaper than the Daily Mail and 10 times better. Yeah. Which, of course, means that it's actually 55p. And you know what? I think it's only when you feel you've been conned by a newspaper's sales tactics that you really know you can trust what's inside. If you feel lied to before you've even got to the headline, how are you supposed to believe them when they're telling you what Princess Diana's getting up to these days? Can you? Now, the Sun costs 50p and the Eye costs 40p, and then you get the Daily Star, although, to be honest with you, I can never remember how much that one costs. But I'm pretty sure it's more expensive than the Metro because, of course, that is free, which is why there were people guessing the Metro over there. But even though it is free, it isn't the cheapest of our national daily newspapers. Now, that honour is obviously held by the Daily Telegraph, isn't it? Yeah. And not only is it the cheapest newspaper in Britain, it is also, as you can see, the national newspaper of the year. Out of all of the national newspapers, the Telegraph has been deemed the best. Yeah. Although, oddly, the Daily Mail is the daily newspaper of the year. So, obviously, if you think of all the daily newspapers, which includes the Daily Telegraph, the clues and the title, then the Daily Mail is the best. But if you're thinking of all the national newspapers, obviously includes the Daily Mail, because that's a national, then obviously the Daily Telegraph is best. Although, that's interesting, because the Daily Mirror is the newspaper of the year. Meanwhile, the Express just styles itself as the world's greatest newspaper. Which is what you say when you know you're never winning an award. But I digress. My point is that the Daily Telegraph is the cheapest daily national newspaper in the country, with its cover price of minus 49p. Isn't that incredible? Minus 49p. They're literally paying you to read it. And I realised I might have framed this question badly, just thinking about it. What I meant to say, what I should have said, is what is the cheapest national daily newspaper when you're at a train station and going to buy a bottle of water anyway? Sorry. I was in a train station recently. I was thirsty. I was going on a journey. I wanted a bottle of water. I went into a shop. I went into a Smith's, and I went up to the fridge to pick up a bottle of water. And as I did so, I saw this sign. Look at that. A free bottle of water when you buy the Daily Telegraph. But here's the confusing thing. I don't think the money men can have done their sums right, because a bottle of water costs £1.89 and the Daily Telegraph costs £1.40. This must be some kind of mistake. I mean, you want a bottle of water, that is worth £1.89 to you, but for that same £1.89, you could also get a bottle of water, the Daily Telegraph, and 49p, which means that the Telegraph is worth minus 49p. Now, obviously, they're pretending that you've gone into a shop to buy a Daily Telegraph and you've come away with a Daily Telegraph and a free bottle of water, but I don't think that that is what is happening. And I can prove it. My evidence is simply this. They keep the Daily Telegraphs in the fridge. There is, of course, a problem with this deal, isn't there? We all know that. There is a problem with this deal. Yes, you've now got a cheaper bottle of water, but you're also now the owner of a Daily Telegraph you didn't want. Don't get me wrong, sometimes you might be very happy to have the paper. I like their crossword. But when it happened to me the other day, I knew I had no need of a newspaper. I had a book. So I tried to leave the Telegraph in the shop, but the woman behind the till wouldn't let me. I know I could just throw it away, but I find the idea of throwing something away when it's perfectly new just a bit odd, a little offensive. I'll show you what I mean. This is our cutlery drawer at home. This is what I'd like to draw your attention to, ladies and gentlemen. That is hundreds of tiny plastic soy sauce fish. You get them when you have sushi, only we don't use those because we have a nice bottle of soy sauce in the cupboard. And we don't throw them away because they're still good. So we put them in the drawer. And you shouldn't do that because I think they breed. We've We've only had sushi at home about 5 times since we moved to this place. Nobody can tell me why we have hundreds of these things, but we do. So anyway, I'm on this train, right? And I have a spare copy of the Telegraph, and I decide that the right thing to do is to leave it prominently on a seat for someone else to read, and nobody else takes it. And you know what? If it had been a metro, it would have been snaffled straight away, wouldn't it? And I don't think that is because everyone prefers the metro to the Telegraph. I think it's because everyone knows that finding it on a train seat is the official distribution channel for the metro. You see this, you see a man on a train with a metro next to him. No part of you thinks you need to ask permission for that man to take that paper. I mean, he can't read it anyway, he's got something in front of his eyes. But you instinctively know, don't you, that a metro being free is always anybody's. But not with a Telegraph. For a Telegraph, it turns out you need to leave it untouched for an hour. That's what happened. 60 minutes into the journey, there's a man who's been sitting opposite me and across from me for the entire journey. He's been observing me. Eventually, he plucks up the courage, leans forward and says, "I couldn't help noticing that you aren't reading that paper. Would you mind?" And I said, "You know what? It's interesting that you asked that, because you are assuming this is £1.40's worth of newspaper and it's actually worth minus 49p, and I'm sure that if you'd known that, you would have asked earlier." And he looked at me like I was the one being weird. So I got my felt tip pens out, I drew a little diagram explaining exactly what I was on about. And you know what? By the time I'd finished, he'd got a little bit agitated, told me he'd missed his stop and he didn't want the paper anyway. I've no idea. What can you do with some people? What can you do?